the play out of this really happens in how you then see companies competing in a market. So you will see that there's a phenomena called a follower and a phenomena called a leader, or in some instances we could call it a prime mover. And a prime mover really just means that I take my view of the world, my business model, and I impose it on the environment around me. If the market adopts my business model over yours, you then have to have a response to that. The response could mean I either change my model to look like yours, or I reinvent my model to be an entirely new model. So the topic around the follower versus leader story is also a crucial element here, because you probably could survive and you could compete by just being a follower over time. But that means that you then set yourself the pecking order that is going to make you successful, within a particular setting. So what I talk about briefly is just this issue of the dominant idea and how various interlinked sigmoid curves normally affect, this drive. So I want to just direct your thoughts to this, and that is that there are really two key views that you have to take here, and I want to talk about two sets of models. The first model is the one that just talks about how economic wealth gets created over time based on a new idea that goes to market, gets an accelerated view of growth, and it gets to a point where it plateaus out. And I want to just raise a critical question, and that is that if you had to take the steam engine, or you had to take the railway line as a concept, it started off slowly, and it took probably 20, 30, 50 years for us to invent steel first, figure out how steam's going to be used first, figure out how to build a carriage, have all those inventions in place. So there's a collective of inventions that normally drive an entirely new phenomena. By the time we figured out that this thing was useful, it became a major adoption. And the reason why it was adopted was because it had utility and it had some benefit. Now, what we've seen in the innovation world, and especially if you look at how curves normally work, is that when a new invention came along, like the motor car, you move from a centrally managed environment to a decentrally managed environment, you then create a discourse. And that discourse in many different theories of innovation are normally prevalent. So it doesn't matter if you look at some of Atterback's models, or if you look at Christensen's models, or any one of those, and we'll introduce those a little bit later to you, is that you have to understand that there's always this issue of one cycle of invention versus another. And if you have bet your entire business on a particular course of action, and that particular course of action drags you into a way of thinking about the world, and the new course of action by other companies are in contrast to what you have done, you will definitely not survive. That's why you see that every 20 to 50 years, if you look at models like the Kondratiev cycle, where basically what it says is that there's an ongoing wave of new invention, and every new cycle of invention will drive new heights of excitement. That's why you need the invention to get the backing financially to disrupt the previous dimension and create an entirely new way in which we will solve a series of innovative problems, or solve these problems innovatively. So that means that if you had the steam, and you had the motor car, and you had modern day technology, and you've got genetics that are still coming, each one of those waves will then shift the behavior that you're going to exert as a company in competing in that space. If we get back to our genetic example, and that is that if I'm a drug company today and I manufacture antibiotics of some sort, I want people to get sick to sell more antibiotics. So my entire business is designed to make sure that people stay sick. But if I'm a genetic company or a life science company, and I know that I can sell you an upgrade to make it J 2.0, and I can genetically remove some of the defects that will never make you sick again, I'm by default threatening the companies whose business models are dependent on that. That means that if I've got a battery-operated vehicle versus a petroleum-operated vehicle, if I've got a technology that is decentralized, if you think about cloud-based technologies versus desktop technologies. So the thing is that it gets applied in many different industries across many different fronts. The fact that these new inventions will typically disrupt what came before them, and this time cycle is being compressed. So that's why innovation in your business is crucially important to make sure that you can get these innovations to assist you in going into the future.